Hi everyone. Alright, so today we are going to continue our chapter 7, designing the service process. So we already covered 6 chapters before this. So chapter 7 is a quite long chapter. So I'm going to separate this chapter into 2 to 3 parts, so it is easy for you to understand. Before we begin with this chapter, so it is important for you to go back to your chapter 2 and understand the 4 main type of processes known as capability, commodity, complexity, and also simplicity, because all these four processes will be repeated in this chapter. So let's go to this chapter. Alright, so what is so important about service process? Alright, okay, service process is important because it can create an excellent service to your customer. It can have this it will help you to satisfy your customer and meet the strategic intention of the organization. So you have to remember, as a service operation manager, your task would be, first is to satisfy your customer, and second thing, you have to make sure all the objective, all the mission and vision of the company is met. Okay, so usually the result of careful design and delivery of a whole set of integrated processes. Okay, so these are the excellent service. So what is the service process? So the service process is basically not to only process your customer, but it's also to create the customer experience, okay, which include all the materials, the information, even the staff in your organization. Okay, although it is only one element of the service operation, it is the glue that holds the rest: the customer, the staff, equipment, and also the material. So what happens in service process is basically, it is the way how you're going to deliver your services to your customer. So it is act as a glue. So all the thing is using the same processes, so you can create an excellent service to your customers. The most important thing there is an important note you have to put in your study is, service provider that consistently meet both cost and quality targets know that they must manage the chain of processes from start to finish, rather than simply the final stage of delivery to the customer. So it is important that you have to manage every single touch point of the customer. So remember, in chapter 6 we talk about the customer, every touch point that the customer has to go through. So the service process is basically the whole process of that particular customer experience. So you cannot, the service operation manager cannot focus on the final stage of that particular service only. Okay, so that's why service frequently fail, because they have been adequately designed and executed. Alright, so what is service? So we have to recall back in our chapter 1. So it is a process or activity, and the service received by the customer is their experience of the service provider, which result in outcomes. So we have 5 service outcomes known as products, benefits, emotions, judgment, and also intention. So you have to go back to your chapter 1. Alright, so what is service processes? So service processes in definition is called as the set of interrelated activities, okay, that together in appropriate sequence deliver the service concept and creates the customer experience and outcomes. So basically this chapter is actually binding chapter 1, chapter 3, chapter 4, and chapter 6. Okay, so it talk about the service concept, it talk about how to create the customer experience and also the outcomes of the customer. Alright, so there are tricky questions the operation managers need to ask, okay, in order for them to understand the nature of their services, or the nature of their service processes, to help them engineer their processes. So these are the 3 questions that you need to ask, okay, yourself as a service operation manager. Okay, first, how much service variety does the process have to deal with? Alright, so how many varieties? So this one you have to reflect back into your chapter 2. So we have the 4 main type of processes. We have the capability, commodity, simplicity, and also complexity. So how much service variety are you offering to your customer? So if there is a lot of service variety, so mean to say that they are going to have a lot of process that you need to deal with. So that will be the first question. The second question is, what type of process is it in terms of volumes and variety that it can handle? So now when you go back to your chapter 2, learning about the volume of people coming into your company, at the same time how much variety that you offer to your customer. Okay, so now how much can you handle? Okay, how much does your employee or your organization can handle? Okay, and the third question would be, where is the value added for the customer? So which part did you put in your service that is considered as value added to your customer? So these are the 3 questions that you need to ask first before you engineer your processes. So what are the things that you can do for your service processes? Alright, so before we design, okay, our service processes, so we have to understand, okay, the mix of these three things known as runners, repeaters, and also strangers. So runners, repeaters, and strangers is basically going to tell you, based on your chapter 2, the complexity, commodity, simplicity, and also capability. So these runners, repeaters, and stranger belongs to which, okay, service processes. So let's go one by one. So runners is basically standard activities, okay, predominantly found in high volume operations, such as if you go to bank, okay, for example, you're going to ask for balance of bank account, okay, at the same time, for example, it is something that happens standard, so it could be at any organization, okay. Sometimes the organization might have one or two, maybe have one or two, or maybe all three mix of runners, repeaters, and strangers. So we're going to go through the example after this. Okay, so the first one is runners are standard activities, and the repeaters are also standard activities, but it is much more complex than runner, and also it is happening quite less frequently. Mean to say that it doesn't happen every day, it doesn't happen frequently, so maybe one or two times. When we talk about strangers, they are non-standard activities, perhaps associated, okay, with one on-off project or activity. So for example of these three things, to make sure you get the understanding of what is runners, repeaters, and strangers, so these are the example. In a car service, the runners is basically in a car service, it's going to contain all three mix of this, okay. So runners, repeaters, and strangers. So in a car service, a standard oil change and maintenance, gearbox repair, replacement of brake pads is basically a standard operations that you need to do, okay. So mean to say that every time a customer came to your service center and they wanted to service their car, so these are the things that you need to do, okay. You have to change the oil, okay, and maintenance. You have to see the gearbox repair, replacement of brake pads, okay. That will be the normal operating standards that you have to do, okay. But you talk about repeater, so this is doesn't happen, it is also a standard activities, but this does not happen frequently. For example, body panel replacement. For example, if your customer came in with their car where they have been in some accident, for example, so you have to replace certain body panel, okay. And then the last part is strangers. It is a non-standard activities whereby certain certain services given to the customer, it is not the standard one, okay. Means to say whenever the customer came, so you have to perform the runners. However, some of them might come with intermittent electrical fault or product retail. So these are the example of runners, repeaters, and strangers. You can also go through the international airline and hospital in order for you to have a clear understanding of runners, repeaters, and strangers. So these are the three things. Okay, so we're going to stop here first because we're going to proceed with our second part. So it is easy for you to understand. First, understand the three mix between the runners, repeaters, and strangers. Then we're going to go through the type of processes. So it is something that you have to note that we already learned about four processes known as capability, commodity, complexity, and simplicity. But in this case, we have another two known as profiling processes and off-diagonal processes. So we are going to continue this after this.